Hello again, and welcome to another video. This is the second take, so I'm just going to go with it, and if it goes wrong, I apologise and I'll put it right on the way. Before we get started, I just want to say thank you for the feedback on the blog, because it really helps me to know that not only are you guys finding this useful, but you're actually also using it too. In this video, we're going to take a step out into the slightly strange, and I'm going to help you understand time management from the perspective of how you personally code time. But before I do that, I'd like you to think of an event in your past, a specific event. Imagine that event for a moment. Conceptually, where is it in space? If I were to ask you to point to the past, where would it be? Now, think of an event out in the future. Where would you point if you were pointing to your future? And the now. If I was to ask you to relax and point towards now, where would that be? I know it sounds a bit weird, but trust me, by the end of the presentation you'll be much clearer. There really isn't any right or wrong. We all have our own unique way of coding time. But for now, let's have a look at the two distinct ways of coding time: in time and through time. In time, if we imagine this is a person and we're looking down on top of his head, a classic in-time person would have the past running from behind out into the future. And again, there are lots of variations just showing on the screen at the moment, but the key distinguishing factor is that now is related inside the body. So where did you point? If it was inside the body or where you were stood, take that as a sign. Classic through time is where the timeline runs outside the body, and in the Western world it's often from left to right. But there are lots and lots of variations. The key distinguishing factor is that now is related outside the body. Now this might be an interesting thought process, but how is it useful in time management? Well, classic in-time people tend to be very associated into now. They may feel like that you have no sense of time. Sometimes something tomorrow can actually feel very similar to something next week. You may not like planning. You may only plan for the event immediately in front of your nose and not think about what's further out. When you're busy, you may completely lose track of time. You'll tend to have memories associated, that is, looking through your own eyes, and you may often like to leave things to the last minute. One of the key distinctions here is how you perceive things out in your future. If you think of an in-time person with 3 events out in the future, you can see that as they look at the event, the event immediately in front of their eyes is obscuring the ones behind it, and this can make planning very difficult. In fact, often the events can actually seem like one thing. Also, if there's somebody with quite a short timeline, the events can actually seem like they're on top of them and overwhelming. Or if there's somebody with a very long timeline, the events may seem way out in the future, so far out that they actually don't need to take any action on them immediately. Whereas classic through time people with the same 3 events can actually see the gaps. You can see here that this person, if they're looking at these 3 events, can see the gaps. This makes planning through time much, much easier, though they tend to be dissociated from now. Even if the now is on top of them, even if these events are really cramming in, they can still see the gap, and they've often got space to think because they're dissociated from now. They can still suffer from the events being out in the future and seeming unimportant, but even then, they can actually see the gaps. Now this may seem a bit strange, but it actually makes some real interesting distinctions. So if we were to do a summary of through time people, they're actually dissociated from now and can see time passing outside of them. They're natural time managers. The problem is they may have trouble relaxing and just enjoying being in the now. These are the people who often invent and run time management systems, and actually for through time people they'll work really well, but for in-timers who don't code time this way, they may not be very good at all. If you are a through timer and you find yourself procrastinating, you might really want to work on whether you really want the thing you're working for, or whether there's some other block in the way. In-timers are very different. In-timers will tend to be associated into now. They'll find it much easier to enjoy the moment, but they're not naturally arranged around time. They'll be easily distracted, may well get overwhelmed by not seeing the gaps between tasks, and may lose all sense of the passage of time. So are the in-timers a complete waste of time? Well, no, but you need to, if you're an in-timer, which I am, you need to use different time management systems. In-timers can be very productive, but will often hate being tied to rigid systems. So why would you try and follow one? My top tip is first get very clear on what's important to you and why. Because the more important it is, the easier it is to find a way to achieve it. I have a friend who told me of one of her most organised friends as an in-timer who just hates being under pressure. So this in-time value forces them to keep organised. This will work in the short term, but personally it doesn't sound like much fun and seems pretty hard work. So I'd recommend finding an enjoyable reason if you can. It's worth recognising your natural patterns and set aside prime time slots of about 90 minutes away from all distractions in order to work towards a specific objective. Really, turn off your mobile phone, get away from your email and leave the internet alone for 90 minutes twice a day and you'll transform your productivity. As you can probably tell, in-time is my pattern, and I've used these slots to knuckle down and write over a year's worth of daily tips that most of you read every day. I found that using a stop-down timer, putting a 90-minute time limit on it, really helped keep me focused. And you don't need anything fancy electronic. I've even used a little plastic chicken egg timer. It works just as well. So, if you are an in-timer, I hope you found this useful, and I hope that you stop trying to use through time management systems to manage your time. If you're an in-timer, well done, you really are well organised. But I have a friend who's a senior lawyer who really needs to learn to switch his timeline into in-time so he could relax and enjoy his time with his family on holiday. So, that's it. I hope you found it useful, and I'll speak to you again soon. Bye for now.